couldn't resist.
Damn it. Let's just start over. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is Adam O'Hearn and Josh Mings calling.
Good morning.
Hi, Adam and Josh. How are you?
Great, wonderful.
Just fantastic. How are you today?
Good.
So, Josh, let me just pose a hypothetical question for you.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, let's say you co-founded a publishing company called OReilly Media.
White books with the black and white animals on the front?
Yeah, those ones.
Okay, love those.
Okay, don't we all? Anyway, so let's say you co-founded that company way back in the day.
Okay.
And one of your early initiatives at said company was to use this newfangled technology called the World Wide Web to create the very first website to ever use clickable banner ads.
Wait, I invented banner ads?
It could be debated who invented them, but let's just say you were the first guy to actually make a website and put clickable banner ads on it.
Okay, wow, I did that?
Yes, Josh, in our hypothetical world, you did that.
I like this hypothetical.
Okay, so you co-founded this successful and important technology publishing company.
Yes, I did.
And you played a pivotal role in the creation of the interwebs.
Yes, I did.
And then, in 2005, this hypothetical version of yourself has an epiphany.
What if...
You think to yourself.
What if I could make technology fun?
So, you use all of your experience publishing in the tech industry to put together a new magazine called Make, based around the idea that everyone should be able to have fun being creative with technology.
Excellent. Wait, why? I would never do that.
Why not?
Because I hate fun.
What?
I'm not fun.
Josh.
I hate it.
Josh,
It's-
you did
yeah.
do it. Or at least this hypothetical Josh did that.
Fine.
Okay, welcome to Engineer vs. Designer.
The podcast.
I'm Adam of CADJunkie.com.
And I'm Josh of SolidSmack.com.
And today we're talking with a very real, not hypothetical guest
at
who
all.
did all of that stuff I mentioned and a whole bunch more.
This week's episode is brought to you in Cam Slim and Sweetness by HSM Works. They're proud to sponsor this episode and proud to bring the maker community HSM Express, the free, easy-to-use, full-featured CAM solution for SolidWorks users. Download it for free right now at hsmexpress.com.
All right, Josh, this is big league stuff now. Are you ready for this, bro?
How do my sunglasses look?
So stoked right now. Dale Dougherty, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show today. And if your tombstone were engraved with nothing but a how-to article for Make magazine, which article would you choose?
Oh boy, not terrible. It's like picking your favorite child sometimes, you know. I think I'll always have a special place for kite aero photography, which is in our very first issue. And to me, it sort of captured the dimension and Make that was new and different. And we're actually recombining components that are pretty widely available, like a disposable camera and a kite, and actually using it for both, interesting technical purposes, but also artistic purposes. And it was developed by, the article was developed by Chris Benton, who is a professor of architecture at the University of California, Berkeley, and originally started taking pictures of buildings from a couple hundred feet in the air. And then he started mapping the California coastline with this, and it just always impressed me and amazed me that here was just a unique perspective that you could get. We all have cameras. We all are point and shoot cameras, and now we're able to put them up in the air and take pictures from a very different perspective than we normally have.
So, Dale, before we talk about your work with Make Magazine, I first just wanted to get some of the backstory. You co-founded OReilly Media, which was founded in 1978. Is that right?
Well, Tim had a company in 1978, but I joined him in 1984, and it was a technical writing company. And right around that time, through say 1985. I really helped start the publishing company. We developed small handbooks on Unix topics, and we were actually in the Boston area, and we were writing computer manuals for mini computers, and most of them started using a Unix operating system, and that just in some ways we just rode the growth of Unix into a publishing business, and that's how we got started. Because but it's kind of interesting. I remember our first computers were Osborne's, then we went to K-Pros, and then we switched to a Convergent Mini Frame, which is running Unix. And from there, we really, started using email and UUCT, and that became one of our books, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Tim and I, really in our background was writers and communicators, and we weren't actually very technical, but we sort of figured that we could try to understand it.
What is the earliest inspiration for Make Magazine? Where did that idea come from?
I think some of what we have done at O'Reilly is sort of observe what people are doing and see patterns emerging. And I just there were a couple of things that I recognized. One is that I thought a generation that was growing up primarily in software was sort of looking back and getting fascinated at hardware again. And to some degree, the iPhone and everything else are that's a new kind of hardware. So computing was moving off like the desktop and out into the world was, kind of the second big idea that sort of came to me. And meaning that the interactions between the physical world and the digital world were becoming really significant. And I just, the third, I think, is that I noted that, it says, what's the wellspring of innovation? Where does it really come from? Does it really come from school? I don't think so. Does it really come from a university training? Likely not. And what I saw in sort of among geeks and others is it actually seemed to come from them playing with technology, that they were fascinated by new technology, what it could do, what they could do with it. They didn't really care what the instructions said. They cared about what they wanted to do, what potential they saw in it. And they didn't necessarily know that they wanted to make a business out of it or that they had some project in mind yet. They were just playing until they got something interesting and begin to find other people doing similar things. So I kind of wanted to recognize that, and put, and so I went from there to look at some of the magazines of the past, like a Popular Mechanics, which has, starts sort of in the early 20th century. And then, there are magazines like Popular Electronics, which really inspires the PC revolution. And there's this sort of a character I call an enthusiast. And it's just the person that really gets excited about this stuff. They're passionate. They find other people that are passionate that way. And I always think it's kind of like Steve Wozniak is the emblem of that, he has this phrase where, he goes down to the homebrew computer club to share computer designs and board designs. And he says, I would do that for free for the rest of my life just because I love doing it, And I think that gets to the heart of where people come from.
So how did you define what success would look like for Make early on, and did you ever expect it to grow as fast as it did?
Yeah. No, I have to say I never really defined success for it. Success was to get it out there. And I knew I could do that. Whether it meant something to other people, as I certainly hoped it would, I didn't really have much control over that. Right. So, everything's been, I think, quite amazing. I mean, you never know whether an idea is any good or not. And the only thing you can really do is do the best job you can executing on it and putting a team of people together that care about it. And, I'd say the thing that sort of worked around Make that, just on a personal level, when I talked to people about the idea, and actually I had this very simple framing. I first told Tim O'Reilly about it in a cab on the way to our open source convention. I remember I said, Tim, think of it like Martha Stewart for geeks. And, it was just this idea of how-to information, of fun projects, and it's the kind of stuff you'd like to do if you were a geek. I didn't necessarily mean it was limited to geeks, but that was it. But when I would say, hey, I got this idea for DIY technology projects, people would start talking, and I could shut up, and they would just go on, you should see what I do in my garage, or I got a brother or, friend or whatever it is that does this kind of stuff. You should really go see them. And it just sort of kind of snowballed a bit. He kept finding more people who were doing this. And I think the really incredible thing about Make and all that we're doing is it's sort of a really big tent in which we can put a lot of different things in there that are often seen separately or disconnected.
Okay, hold that thought, Dale. I can't wait to hear more. Josh needs to go touch up his lipstick. We'll be right back.
This week's episode is brought to you by HSM Works, creators of HSM Express for SolidWorks. Designers, engineers, and makers alike have a fresh new CAD to CAM experience with HSM Express. Create high-quality toolpaths in minutes right inside SolidWorks for free. Download your copy of HSM Express now at hsmexpress.com. And we're speaking with Dale Dougherty, co-founder of OReilly Media and founder of Make Magazine.
So for those of you who might live under a rock and aren't familiar with the maker movement, it's kind of a big deal right now. It's been compared to the open source software movement in the 90s that fundamentally changed the nature of the software industry and kind of made the way for the internet as we know it today.
And like open source software programmers, makers build gadgets using freely available technologies and then share their designs with others who then improve on them or modify them for their own projects.
Because of the maker movement, we now have 3D printer kits that you can buy and set up at your house. We have open source circuit boards called Arduino boards that are designed to let an average person with a short learning curve make their own working electronic gadgets at home. People are making things like motion detectors, automatic plant watering systems, homemade bicycle computers, and synthesizers and wearable electronic clothing. And the work that our guest Dale Dougherty is doing at Make Magazine has been really central to this movement, but it's more than just a printed publication.
Yeah, Make isn't just a magazine. It's a community, it's an ideology, it's a social movement, and it's centered around the Maker Faire. Where did the idea for gathering together as a community come from, and how did you get it off the ground?
It certainly emerged from the magazine. The magazine started publishing in 2005, and our first Maker Faire was 2006. And I'll tell you, part of it is this. I'm just running into people that are either writing for the magazine or people interested in the magazine who want to share their project idea. And it just seemed like wouldn't it be fun to get these people together? Because first of all, these makers would enjoy meeting each other. They would see the connection between their work, regardless of whether they were in electronics or carpentry or robotics. They would enjoy each other, and I thought, well, let's see. I would maybe the public would enjoy meeting them because as enthusiasts, they love to talk about their projects. And I thought the simple forming idea of Maker Faire was a bit like a science fair, but more informal, of just be able to tell us about your project. How'd you come up with the idea? Where'd you get the parts? How difficult is it? Could I do it? Those kinds of things. And it just, it grew from there. And then working with my team, we kind of designed it so it was family oriented. We didn't really want it to be just a geek fest of particular, males into technology. We really wanted families to come and have fun. The premise of Make and the premise of Maker Faire is it's first and foremost fun and cool to do this stuff. There's a lot of other reasons you might connect to it, but if it's not fun, you don't care about it.
You are just unbelievably good at leading us from one question to the next. You obviously love what you do, and you talk a lot about the importance of play and of playing, and you've compared this magazine to Martha Stewart and the Maker Faire to a science fair and inviting families with kids. Can you talk at all about the idea of playing with technology and why you think that's such an important thing?
Well, first of all, it just happens. It's one of those sort of natural things with many people who, if it hasn't been beaten out of you, you're kind of curious how things work, and you build on that. So, but play is this, I think, wonderful framing of it's both, a set of personal goals and it's a social context. Like I play because and again, it's as you think about things like hobbies and frame them as plays. Sometimes, in our big multitasking lives where we've got all these things going on, sometimes getting the space clear to focus on something for an hour and a half is really amazingly wonderful. And, you lose yourself for that time in doing one thing, and it might be with, soldering something very small, but that focus, attention, and kind of state of mind is quite wonderful, and I think it's the source of creativity, it's the source of innovation to get that time for ourselves. So it's important to develop and make space and time for that, But I think also it is a way to say it's an open-ended thing, so that you don't necessarily sit down with the intention of what this means or where it goes. You might want to finish a project and things, that's all fair, but you don't know where it's going to take you, and I think that's kind of exciting. It's an adventure. And then socially, playing with other people, when you make something and you can share it, and I think one of the strong models in the make community is sort of, you might call it interaction design, but whether it's Maker Faire or a project, you're making something that other people are going to interact with, or in this case of make, build something based on your design. But what kind of experience is that? And as you make, I think of it just as a kid, you sometimes might have made race cars or things, but you take them to a track and you run the race car around, you see how it works, and you see how other race cars work, and you go back and you iterate over that, and you say, I can make it better, I can make it faster. And so, that's a really just sort of natural progression of improvement. And I think it's kind of a really good model to have for development.
You seem particularly interested in the influence of make on kids. I love that. And what's the importance that children have to you in regards to making and design communities?
Yeah. Well, again, it's almost, I have to admit, when I started Make, I thought, okay, this is a magazine, they always ask you to kind of form demographics, and it's about 35 to 55. And I was kind of thinking of, folks that sort of had their careers established, and families maybe are underway, and they're just looking for some fun things to do as hobbies. And I think the interesting thing over the 8 years we were doing the magazine, the Maker Faire, is each year the audience is getting younger. Each year, the people reading Make are, teenagers instead of, older folks. And I, that's just, it's a delightful surprise to me. And I want to take advantage of that to understand what their needs are. And I think, as I would define it, if you go to a Maker Faire and you see the kids around, they're just so engaged. Their eyes are lit up. They want to do this stuff. And my sadness sometimes is they go back into the community, particularly their schools, and there's nothing there for them like this. They're bored. They're sitting in class. They're getting textbooks, and tests instead of, cool projects to do. And I know this is an effective way of learning, and we've actually marginalized it and we've forgotten about it. But it goes back to people like John Dewey, who said, "Learn by doing." I'm just sort of on a campaign to drive this back into communities, back into homes, back into schools. As something that's a tremendously valuable experience on its own, but does lead to develop competencies and capabilities in science and technology, which I think are at the core of our culture today.
What would you say is your favorite thing about your job?
People, just the makers and the community that we have. They're just really good people that care, that want to, that they both, as I said, kind of like they have personal goals for transformation. They have social goals for transformation. They're trying to do interesting things, and I feel a part of that, and I think that helping to move that along. And meet those folks, learn what they do, learn about the impact on their lives. I think that's really my favorite part.
And then what's the most difficult thing about your job?
Well, I think a lot of it is you see opportunities and needs that you don't necessarily have the resources to accomplish. I'll give you a practical example, and you just kind of you develop strategies for it, but it's not always what you may prefer. And someone writes in and says, my son has Asperger's, and he went to a maker fair and found, this other kid who had autism, and they got together, they could communicate in email. I would have never thought my son had any mechanical ability or interest in technology, and he's into this, going full steam. You should, and this is the hard part, you should form, an alliance with the, blankety blank society and get this into that whole community. And and it's a struggle because there's a lot of those things. And partly my response is, that's a great idea. I don't know that I can do it myself, but would you help me, push it forward? Can you take the lead on this? In the DIY spirit, what can you do? What can each of us do to move this forward? I'm not necessarily a centralized organization that can make all these things happen. And but you see the opportunity, when you get that kind of feedback. And I'd say a related thing is for, when you're working in education and other things, you might get that kind of story, but in another context, people might say, well, what kind of proof do you have that this really is valuable? The kids learn from it, blah, 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 and they're kind of wanting statistical data and such, which I don't have. And that's sometimes a struggle. Because I actually think they're asking the wrong question and asking for the wrong answer. So it's, you kind of beat your head against the wall on some of those issues.
Well, I'd actually like to, instead of asking the next question, can we dig a little bit deeper into that? What would you say is the right question to be asking about the effectiveness of hands-on projects for education? Kind of the issue that, at least in American education, we have, is we have kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. We are going to use something like standardized tests to determine whether your level of math and reading ability, and we're going to make judgments about that, both about the school, about the teachers, and about the future of the student. Typically, those kinds of assessments don't get at anyone, the ability of anybody in that system. They don't encourage teachers to be better. They don't, and creative. They don't if a kid is bored by math, it tells them they're not good at math, and the truth is they're just bored by the subject and the presentation in a particular context. It doesn't mean their capabilities in that area are bad or at fault. So when I struggle with this, I don't think you can say do a lot of hands-on projects and necessarily take a test and standardized test it and show improvement on that. What I do think is, and again, it's in an educational context, those tests are reflecting largely the teacher's ability to cram a lot of useless information in the kid's head that they will remember for until the test is over. It doesn't represent, in my opinion, authentic learning. Things that have much more to do with process than output. How do you, one of the key things for any kind of product development, design, technology use is iteration. How do you go take an idea and improve it and go over it over and over? That's what writers have to do. You write a sentence and you go, that could be better, and you try it again. I think all of us do that in various ways, and I think education wants to be much more about connecting kids to that process and getting comfortable with frustration and failure. To overcome those things. So that's all part of an authentic learning experience, and how do we measure that? And that sort of gets to the heart of this. It may not be in numbers or purely quantitative terms, but I think kind of a mantra I started using for myself is making creates evidence of learning. And so, in other words, we actually have evidence of authentic learning through the project that a child might participate in and develop and have a role in creating. But we also have the opportunity to engage
the child in stories, telling stories about that process. How did you do this? Was it hard? How does it work? Where did you get the materials? Where did you come up with this idea? And how long did it take you to do that? That kind of storytelling is also a reflection on the process and the progression that you have as an individual from starting somewhere and making progress. And just to give you an idea, something on this workshop I was at on the weekend, I thought it was someone just threw it off and it just stuck in my head as a phrase that I'd like to keep repeating, but it's, what can you do with what you know? And sometimes school is more this keep learning. You have to know more, and they never sort of address that question, what can I do? And I think to really develop as a person, you always want to know what you can do. And for education to be relevant, it has to be about what do you do with what you know, and realizing that by knowing more, you can do more, but by doing more, you want to learn more. And so we have a kind of a problem, I'd say, in America at least, where kids don't necessarily see the relevance of a lot of education because it is just content, and it doesn't come across to them as empowering them to do things in their own lives, in their own communities, and to make a difference.
I don't think I can add anything to that.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Today we're speaking with Dale Dougherty, co-founder of OReilly Media and founder of Make Magazine, and key figure in the maker movement we talk about so often here on EvD.
Yeah, so, Dale, Make Magazine is full of stories about fascinating people. It's a tech-savvy publication that really seems to focus on people and their stories rather than widgets and their uses. Can you talk at all about that decision?
Well, I think people are inspiring. You know, when you see someone, you get to know them. In a sense, what I find, what kind of stories we're telling often is about what we call ordinary people, right? These are PhD, Nobel Prize winning chemists or something. These are people that we can identify with. They're still very smart. They're incredible in what they do. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the context of that, I think, like Maker Faire, it invites us to participate. It invites us to believe that others who are like us, you know, can accomplish things and do things, and it's satisfying and rewarding to do that in the context of, say, family or context of friends, or context of a hackerspace. You know, it's just these are things that make our lives better. We enjoy, and we get a lot out of them. So I think we wanted the core of Make to be how-to projects. They said we want to tell you how to, you know, not tell you, but like, you know, show you how things are something can be made, something that's fun to do, and that you can learn from doing that. But I'm really interested that the people behind them are pretty compelling too.
Absolutely. I mean, and so on the other side of that, you know, there are those on the outside that might argue that some of the things at a Maker Faire are maybe not that useful, and that the energy and resourcefulness put into building an electric cupcake mobile might not be spent on something else. What would you say to the naysayers who kind of think that makers might be wasting their time? Yeah, well,
I think who are we to judge is you know, one of the things here, you know, is you know, when people are doing something fun and enjoying themselves and sharing with the community, and I have to say, humor is one of the elements that I find in the Make community.
Absolutely.
It comes from art. It comes from even some of the, you know, sort of hardcore projects we have, like the Useless Machine. You know, it's a perfect example of a machine that does absolutely nothing, but it makes you laugh.
Absolutely,
you know?
It does.
And it's kind of satire on things, but you know, even when you know what it does, in the sense it doesn't do anything, you still keep making it do it. You know, so ultimately a lot of this is about our own humanity and discovering that and who we are and what we're doing, and not all of it is functional or meant to be.
And why technology? Why does Make focus on building things with high-tech components like Arduino boards and LED lights? Or is that interest driven by the community?
Well, I think both. Technology is a unifier for what we're doing, and I think it's so important to our lives that I think all we did in ways of saying that technology is not just functional, it's something we play with, we have fun with, and we think about it as a component of applications that we might want to build ourselves. Mm-hmm. We made a pretty conscious decision early on to try to have a really broad sense of what technology was, so that we could cover, basic carpentry project or building a wooden plane or something of that nature, which really isn't using any high-tech gadgetry. But I did think in some ways we were kind of reinventing popular mechanics for the digital age of today, for the 21st century. And we wanted to kind of enable that. And platforms like Arduino have become amazingly important in this sort of model of connecting the digital world with the physical world, of employing sensors and getting input and causing certain things to happen as a result. And it's a relatively cheap platform that's open to lots of uses. And so I just think it was a sweet convergence. I mean, Arduino didn't exist when I started the magazine, but I kind of knew something like that should exist because you needed to have this sort of processing or intelligence around some of these applications. But it's quite amazing the wide range of applications for these tools.
So Dale, you played a really important role in the growth and development of the internet at OReilly Media. And like us here at EvD, Tim O'Reilly and yourself seem to have a pretty dim view of the SOPA and PIPA bills currently working their way through Congress, anti-piracy acts that would give Congress more control over the internet. Can we take a couple of minutes to get your thoughts on this?
Sure. I'm no expert on it, but I think a dim view summarizes it pretty well.
Yeah.
I think the I don't know. I saw something yesterday. Rupert Murdoch was criticizing Google for coming out against SOPA, and I think the administration, White House came out against it, which is good, or at least said they wouldn't support it. I think we're in this really interesting time where a lot of the things that gave large institutions control over markets and people are being threatened, and I think SOPA is the kind of thing where the old guard, in a sense, can use their power over the political process to continue to achieve their goals and protect their institutions and their markets. And the rest of us have to say, well, what's our stake in that? Is this good for us, or is it just good for them? And I don't think they actually have. I think they have more of an autocratic than a democratic purpose in doing this. They want to be in a position of controlling this stuff and not giving people access to it. So, I think it comes back to that they're really not going to win this war, no matter what they do. Even though they can win legal battles, even though they can win political battles, I think the internet and the technology will eventually, ensure that it's open. But sometimes when we say that, people grow complacent and say, well, those guys are just fools, and it doesn't matter what law is passed because they can't enforce it. The fact is they can screw with us. So getting bills like SOPA defeated is a good thing, and we should all figure out ways of participating to avoid it passing.
Dale, your story is so inspiring and a big inspiration for what we're trying to do here at EvD as well. What advice do you have for somebody who has an idea but is afraid it's impossible?
Oh, it's not. That's the wonderful thing today is if particularly in areas like we just came out with a kits issue at the end of last year. And I think kits is this wonderful area that is growing in importance, the ability to develop kits instead of packaged products. It's a great way to think about products, new kinds of platforms for people to do stuff. But I would say that, if you're a 17-year-old kid and you had an idea for a website or maybe even a mobile app, there are very few barriers to at least you prototyping that and getting something going. You're going to have to learn HTML5 or blah, blah, blah. You have to dive in and learn stuff, but you could probably do this. And I think in hardware, we're kind of approaching an era where the obstacles are rather small. I mean, they still exist, but you could still do the same level as you could almost that prototype of a website. You could prototype a piece of hardware. You could get a couple things made and begin to show people and interact with them. And where it goes from there is always open. But, what we're seeing for entrepreneurs and stuff is that they're able to get started today. They're able to get a product to market. And then, if they are fortunate enough, they have, the subsequent problem of scaling with success, that as they sell more, they may have to come up and learn new manufacturing processes or find additional capital. But getting started and demonstrating what you do, I think is the most valuable thing. And the Make community has had sort of this, I think one of the innovations of it is sort of the default is sharing rather than hiding, and meaning, inventors and others, and I think in the past felt, oh, geez, someone's going to steal my idea. I better hold on to it and hold it tight. I think today is I start sharing because, you really need to get out in the community. People need to know who you are, and you have lots of ideas. If you're smart, you're going to come up with lots of them. Let's not worry about holding them all back. Let's figuring out how to develop them and get them out. And at the same time, figure out how to make money on it. But, start getting things into the market. And it's kind of like the open source mentality here is you get to be known by the projects you develop. And so that's where, focus on that. Focus on how to start a project, build things that people care about. And get that kind of feedback going.
Yes, get it out there, people. Dale, absolutely fabulous. I got to tell you, having you on the show has been one of the crowning achievements of Adam's life.
It has.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and good luck. I hope we meet in person someday. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
I mean, I'm just so inspired by this guy. Generally speaking, I hate the word passion, but I can't think of a better word to describe the way that he speaks. I mean, he genuinely loves people and works every day of his life to build into people and build into his relationships with people.
Yeah, it is. And, passion is a great word. It amazes me how he recognized the desire people have to make. And especially with all the technology that they talk about, and particularly how they brought children into the maker space. It's an absolutely wonderful time to be living.
So if you would like to send autographed photos of Dale Dougherty to EvD HQ, please address those to Adam.
Okay, and if you'd like to send autographed photos of Adam, don't bother. Adam's got plenty of those already. Engineer versus designer. Appreciate your comments. If you like us, hate us, or whatever, head over to engineerversusdesigner.com and let us know what you think.
And if you'd like to see us shipped off to a desert island, be sure to like us, +1 us, follow us, or whatever. And social media has been correlated with similarly pathetic, lonely existence.
Our theme music is by Ross Hartman.
We'll see you next week. And remember, without designers, engineers would replace themselves with robots.
And without engineers, designers would replace their robotic arms with featherless chickens.
That was an anticlimactic ending.